Good day to you all again, and welcome to another video in my series on the Boerboel breed standard. Now, I do get a lot of questions from people asking me numerous things about the dogs, and one of the main things that are coming up lately is I have this type of Boerboel. I have a houndy type of Boerboel, and I have got a bulldoggy type of Boerboel. Now, I've always been saying that there's only one type of Boerboel, and that's the Boerboel described in the breed standard. The breed standard does have certain small leniencies to allow this or that, but the standard is very fixed. And what I realized is that most of the people, when they talk about my dog looks different to another Boerboel or a different type of Boerboel, they're referring to the head of the Boerboel. Now, the breed standard and all the breed standards around the Boerboel talk about the same things when it refers to the head of the Boerboel. And I'm going back to all the oldest breed standards that I know of, that I can refer you guys to, and it's right from the beginning. A little bit of the measurements was put in later, but it's all relationships. Now, let's only talk about the head of the Boerboel. Now, the breed standard is very specific, and it says that the Boerboel must have a blocky head. In other words, there must be a block, right? A square block. It's basically one big square, which is the main cranium of the dog, and then another block, which basically represents the snout of the dog, right? Or the muzzle of the dog, right? Okay, now if you take those two blocks, right, I'm going to start to draw a Boerboel, right? With those two blocks, I'm going to try and show you what a Boerboel's head should look like. Okay, right. Now the first thing we do is we read in the breed standard, and they say the stop. The stop is the part between the nose and the roof of the skull. That must be a gradual slope. Okay, it's a gradual slope. So we can draw in a gradual slope. It means it's not 90 degrees, it's not 180 degrees. This is not a bull terrier and it's not a boxer. It's something between the two, so it's about 45. Now, the second thing the breed standard says is, it says that these two blocks it doesn't mention anything about equal, but it says that there's a relationship between the size of the length of the nose and the length of the roof of the skull. And the length of the roof of the skull is 3 units, and the nose of the dog, the muzzle of the dog, is 2 units. So it's very easy. If you take the muzzle of the dog and you say that's 2 units, in other words, let's say you measure it with your fingers and it's about 4 fingers wide, then the roof of the skull should be about 6 fingers, right? So it's 2 to 3. Okay. Very easy, or 1 to 1.5. So if your dog has a muzzle that is longer than the roof of the skull, it's wrong. If your dog has a roof of the skull that's extremely long and the muzzle is very short, it's wrong. The breed standard gives a very simple explanation or relationship between the two, and it says 2 units for the muzzle and 3 units for the roof of the skull. The next thing that the breed standard talks about is it talks about the planes of the muzzle and the plane of the roof of the skull. It says that they must be on the same plane. Now, what is that? It means that the roof of the skull can run like this, and the muzzle must run like that. You can see that those two lines are parallel. They're on the same plane, right? So now we're starting to get a head of a dog, right? It's very simple, okay? So what we did is we drew a line. Those planes don't need to be horizontal, but they need to be on the same plane. If you get a dog with a nose that runs down like that and a roof of a skull that's round, it's wrong, right? If your roof of the skull is not flat, it's rounded, it's a little ball, it's not correct. It must be level and on the same plane as the nasal bone. And then you get your stop, and now we're starting to get a dog. Okay, right. Now we need to complete this block, right? This block it ends in the occipital dome, and then you get the neck of the dog, right? This block here, it has a nose leather, the dog, right? And from the nose leather, it has its lips. The lips go down, and it has a lower jaw. The lower jaw goes down, and there goes your neck. And can you see, we already have a head shape, but this head shape has got certain relations. It does not go shallower than this. Some guys are breeding dogs that look like anteaters, the dogs. the mouse, and they can eat right really in their little holes. It's not. A Boerboel's got a blocky square muzzle and it's got a blocky square head. Now, the position of the eye is also well described in the breed standard, and it must be a nice big eye. Sorry, I'm not much of an artist. Now let's get to the ears. The breed standard also says the ears are V-shaped. Very easy, they V-shaped. They don't have a rounded tip. If you get a dog with rounded tip ears, start digging around. There's some Cane Corsas has these nice rounded tip ears. Check on them, but it's all the features of the dogs. It's in the breed standard. There's nothing else but the breed standard. We don't need to deviate from it. Everything is good. Okay, now if me as an appraiser, if I look at the dog from the side like this, just looking at the shape of the head, if I see the nose lever there, the muzzle, there's a little nose, and I look at the dog from the side and I see this lower jaw jutting out like that, I immediately know that there's something wrong with the bite of this dog, right? If I look at the same picture, right, let's say there's the nose leather, right there, sorry, and this little jaw sits down here, I immediately know there's something wrong with the bite of the dog. Okay, so it's very important. You'll always see a good appraiser when the dog's in the ring and he's looking at its head. He goes down to the level of the dog and he looks at something on the dog's head. Now, you guys normally don't get told what they're looking at. First of all, they have to look at the relationship and the two blocks, the two squares. And secondly, they're looking at the jutting of the jaw to see if it's an underbite or an overbite. Right, that's what they do. Right. The next thing we look at, and that's something that is so much ignored nowadays. Right. Now, would you guys say, if I had a dog, let's say there's the nose leather again, there's the top of the nasal bone, and suddenly I don't even see its mouth. Bloody lips are hanging down here, and there's a little jaw jutting out there. Right, and there goes the head. Is this correct? No, it is definitely not correct. The breed standard says the lips must be tight. And the top lip must just cover the lip of the lower jaw, right? The lower jaw must still be visible, not just a little tippy in front with lips hanging over the side. It's got too much skin, and it is a problem with the Boerboels nowadays, and it should be severely penalized. Okay, now the head of the dog, you can't only look at it from the side. You've also got to look at the head of the dog from the top. Now again, let's look. We form a square, must be a block. Remember, we said the dog must have a blocky head. And now let's take a pen. Oh no, but I need to do the second block as well. Right, there's the second block, right? Oh, so you can see these are squares, right? They are cubes. And now, let's start filling in. Let's start, wrong color pen. Where's that pen? Right, let's start filling in this head. And the ears should be somewhere up here. Can you guys now see that the head is blocky from the side and from the top? It hasn't got a muzzle that comes down like this. That's an anteater, right? It hasn't got a muzzle that runs as wide as the head. That's a catfish, right? So stay away from those two things. Breed Boerboels. Don't breed other stuff, right? We've also got to look at the dog from the front, the head of the dog from the front. And again, we can draw a block. Ears lying flat against the head. That's another thing that I will speak on later in one of the other videos. The ears must be lying flat against the head of the dog. They shouldn't be sticking out like this and making aeroplane wings and rosebuds and all of that. The dogs of the ears of the Boerboel lies flat against the head of the dog. There's normally a little gap in there for air ventilation, but it's not an ear that sticks out like a funny limb. Okay, right, so in summary, what did I talk about? I talked about the blockiness of the head of the dog, the relationship between the length of the muzzle and the roof of the skull, the level of the planes that must be on the same plane, the nose, the muzzle of the dog and the roof of the skull. I talked about the length of the lower jaw. I talked about the length of the lips and what is wrong there. Oh yeah, by the way, people tell me, oh, my dog drools. It drools terribly. What happens is this lower lip is normally open there, right? You will see there's a flap of skin hanging open here. Man, and the inside of the mouth is like rain gutters. You are producing saliva inside your mouth, and your lips are keeping it inside your mouth, and you are swallowing it as you are producing it. What if it would have happened if your one lower lip was hanging down here? The saliva would be running out there, and if the saliva runs out there like it does in a dog, you say, look at the drool on that dog. Man, it was badly bred. The lips are not tight. It's drooling because the lip is open and the drool is coming out there. The dog can't help it. It's genetics. It's not well done. Then it does not follow the breed standard exactly. You can have a slight opening of the bottom lip, and that is allowed in the breed standard, but it should not be open, excessively open, so that the fluid runs out of there. Okay, right. What else? I looked at the head from the top. I looked at the width of the muzzle from the top, not a narrow one, not a big block like this, right? And I looked at the ears and the fact that they must be lying against the side of the head. Okay, right, I think that's about it on the head of the dog. I'll go into much more detail in one of the future lectures. But what I wanted to tell you guys is, please, I have a series of videos in which I describe all of these things, in which I'm trying to give education to the people across the world about Boerboels. You guys might know this very well and know exactly how to apply, but not everybody does. So please subscribe to my channel. My channel on YouTube is Johan Swart 100. I'm looking to change the name of the channel, but I will notify you all, right? It's my channel, and subscribe to it. If you're on the channel, like it. If you like the videos, please post a like. To subscribe to the channel means nothing. You don't pay any fees, nothing. Just click on subscribe. Then when I produce new videos, you will be automatically notified there's a new video from this guy called Johan Swart in Mozambique, who's busy talking about the real breed standard of the Boerboels. Okay, the last thing that I want to speak to you is about my book. I have a book called The Boerboel, a revision of the origins and the history of the breed, in which I really made a couple of amazing discoveries, digging into the history, digging into archives, and trying to figure out where the hell does this breed come from. Nobody created it in South Africa. There was no group of breeders that said, oh, we are going to create a Boerboel. We're going to mix this and we're going to mix that. What happened is the first guys in 1987, 86, 87 got together and they said, listen, we need to preserve the dogs that we knew of our forefathers. These dogs are being crossbred. Soon they will no longer exist. Let's form an association and try and identify those dogs that still look like purebred. And let's put a mechanism in place to get rid of those dogs that are not purebred, so that eventually we have a core of these dogs again with which we can continue. That's the ethos. That's how the first Boerboel Association that is publicized was established. There were other Boerboel associations before the SABT, and it's all revealed in my book. The first reference to the Boerboel was 1896, right? And 1987 an association was formed. So there were a couple of other organizations preceding the SABT, and we unfortunately did not get a record of the breed standard they were following, but there's even references to the breed standard, the standard of the Boerboel that was not being applied in 1955. So guys, what I'm talking about here is not the IBASA breed standard, it's not the ABC breed standard, it's not the Russian Kennel Federation breed standard, it's everybody's breed standard. This is what a Boerboel should look like. I thank you, and I will soon be producing the next video.